In this video, we are going to take a look at another type of display. So in the previous video, we talked about a few different types of ways to display items, these inline, these blocks, etc. The next one we're going to talk about is called Flex. I'm going to walk through essentially what the W3 Schools tutorial does as well. So I'll use some of their terminology in a second. But let's get started. We're just going to do a demonstration here in the tutorials. I'll do new folder 6-2 Flexbox. Let's go ahead and create some files, an HTML file and a CSS file. Let's get that template in there. And let's link the flex.css. Okay. So we have our HTML set up, and we're just going to do a demonstration here. For the demonstration, I'm going to essentially have what is an outer box and a few items inside. These are all going to be divs. The first one I'm going to call or give a class called Flex Container. We'll talk about these names in a second. And then inside, I'm going to have a few classes. I'm going to call them Flex Item. We'll do item 1, and then item 2, item 3. Let's add some CSS so we can see these things. I'm just going to give them different background colors. So Flex Container will have a background. Let's just do light. I'll do a darker one, blue. I'm going to give it a little padding, maybe 20 pixels. And our items, let's give them similar things. Do padding 20 pixels. We'll see how this looks. Okay. So right now we have kind of these three separate items here. They're kind of merging, so I'm actually going to put a little bit of margin underneath each of them. So that's the flex items. These are the interior pieces. The dark blue here is our flex container. So for now, I'm just going to do margin bottom, 10 pixels, and refresh. Okay. So here's kind of just a generic block structure with a few interior items. Now, so far what we've looked at is kind of laying out things in a vertical fashion. We can see by default these items, these boxes, get put one after the other. First we have item 1, then item 2, and then item 3. But we might want to implement a horizontal layout. And we're not really there yet. Like, how do we do that? How do we move these things over? So that is where our new display property comes in. And we can actually do this pretty quickly. Let's go over here. Now normally, if you want to adjust the display of different items, we could do them one by one. You could do them in these here. For example, if I did display block, maybe nothing will happen. Let's try that again. Oh, sorry, let's not do block, let's do inline block. Because we want these to merge onto one row here. Okay. So inline block right away shifts that to a kind of horizontal layout. That's because instead of taking up the whole width, they take up just how much text or how much space they're asking for. And we covered this idea in our last section. So this is one way we can get them to align horizontally. Now what we're doing is changing each individual item's display. But we have an alternative that gives us a little bit more power over where we can put these things. Let me show you that. Let's get rid of the display inline block. And instead of changing the display of the interior items, we're going to change the display of the outside. We're going to do display and then flex. So this is a little bit different. Here, the display, we choose the outside element, and then it will align these elements inside quite nicely. If I save this and run it, it's essentially doing the same thing here. We can see that the items have been pushed all together. We aren't getting this division here. That's because the margins are a little funny. Instead of doing margin bottom, you can see there's a little bit of space here. Let's just do margin 10 pixels. Okay. And now we got these evenly laid out items. So essentially it did the same thing as the display inline block, but we'll have a little bit more of shortcuts we can take and to move these things around. So let's try that out. One thing we can do is in our container, there's a few powerful properties we can use. The first one is called justify content. And you'll see a bunch of options here. You can play around with it. Let's try one. Let's try center. What happens when we save this? If I save it and run it, now we can see it puts those items in the middle. That's a nice thing about the Flexbox is just by this one property, now we push them in here. Let's do a few more. We could do space around. In this case here, now it kind of evenly puts space in between them. There's space here, here, and here. You can notice that these are a little bit bigger. I think that's because there's two sections. Basically, this distance here is doubled in between because we have space to the left and the right, and item 2 has a little space here. That's space around. You can do space between. That will basically put one item in the ends here and then evenly distribute the other items inside. Maybe it's easier if I show you a few more items here. Not easier, but maybe more, a little bit more clear. So adding a few more items here, now we can see that inside they're kind of evenly spaced out here. So this gives us a kind of fast, nice way to quickly align these different items. Let me show you one more thing. If I decrease the browser size, like imagine you're on a phone or something, you can notice that these items, they get scaled here. Like basically they get scrunched smaller and smaller. We can actually change this. We can choose our property flex wrap. And this is on the outside here, the container. We'll do flex wrap. And then we can choose either no wrap or wrap. Let's try wrap. We'll make this bigger to start. Let's refresh. And as we get smaller, once we hit the kind of point where there's no space in between, you'll notice that the items go down. So here they get pushed down. Maybe I can make this a little bit more clear by doing just a few more so we can really see the wrap going on. And so now if I make it smaller, now all of a sudden they're being pushed down. So this is a useful property. Instead of getting scrunched, we can now like kind of shove them down and get the icons below, which makes it a little bit more responsive. So pretty straightforward, honestly. If you just add our display flex and a few of these properties, give us a lot of control, especially when you are looking at kind of a horizontal layout. In the next video, we'll talk about how you can give different items more or less space.